This is another application of systems of linear equations. So on each of these, we're still looking for two different quantities, which means you're going to have two different variables. So if we read this together, the sum of two numbers is 83. One of the numbers is 11 more than the other. What are the numbers? So I've already written them down here. We have one number is, and we just call that x. You always want to start by defining your variables. Very, very important part of word problems. Second variable then would be y. So one number is x, the other number is y. And then now all we have to do is, just like we've done other ones, is just plug the x and the y back in for each statement. So the first one says the sum of two numbers is 83. That's saying that our two numbers have a sum that remember, is equals 83. So that gives us our two equations. X plus y equals 83. So it's still the same format. You want to define your variables, form your equation. The difference now is we're going to have equations, because if you have two variables, you have two equations. And then we'll solve them and then review our answers. So the next one says one of the numbers, which letter is that? That's our x, it really doesn't matter in this one, is, and then 11 more than. More than means plus, and then the other is y. And see, they form the equation. You're just translating. So one of the numbers is x, is means equals, 11 is obviously 11, more than is plus, and then the other is y. So we end up with x equals 11 plus y. And so this is a substitution. So if we put x plus y equals 83, x equals 11 plus y, we can then substitute our x for 11 plus y. So we're just substituting the x. And then subtracting 11. So 2y equals 72. Divide by 2. So y is 36. And then again, we come back over here, plug it in, and that's 47. So one number is 36, the other is 47. Very important is to review your answers. So the first says the sum of our two numbers is 83. So 36 plus 47 would give us 83. One of the numbers is 11 more than the other, and 47 is 11 more than 36. So those are our answers. So it's the same four steps on every single problem that we're going to do. You define your variables. So we call one x, the other one y. And by defining them, we're saying that our x is one of the numbers and y is the other number. And then we substitute them back in to form two equations. How do we know we'll have two equations? Because we have two variables. And then we will use substitution or elimination to find our answers. And then review those answers to make sure they are correct. So let's try another. It says here that the width of a rectangular garden is 1/3 its length and its perimeter is 32. Find the dimensions of the garden. So the two things we're looking for are the dimensions of the garden, and that would be its width and its length. So we start by defining our variables. Our width here is x, our length is y. And then we form an equation. So what I like to do anytime you have something that you can draw a picture, like a rectangular garden, is to draw a rectangle. So this is our garden. And it's saying our length is y and our width is x. So if we were to keep continuing this, this would be y and this would be x because their opposite sides are equal in a rectangle. And so what a perimeter is the length all the way around. So if you look at it, you have two y's and two x's. So two y's or two x's plus two y's, just to keep it in alphabetical order, is, and then our perimeter here is 32. So our perimeter, which is the distance around the outside of this rectangular garden, is 32. Okay, so that's one equation. What do we need? One more. And there's always a translation since these are called translations. So it says the width of a rectangular garden. What letter is that? Let's move this up a bit. That one is x. is equals 1/3 is 1/3. Its length, and its length is y. So the width of a rectangular garden is 1/3 its length. The other one is its actual second equation, and its perimeter is 32. So x equals 1/3 y. So what method will we use here? Substitution again. So 2x plus 2y equals 32. And then the other equation is x equals 1/3 y. So if we plug it in, and we solve, we have this. So we can add these together, but we know a little trick, and that is if you see a fraction in an equation, you can multiply both sides by the LCD. So 3 times 2 is 6. 6 divided by 3 is 2. 3 times 2 is 6. And 3 times 32 is 96. And if we add these together, divide by 8, our y here is 12. And then what do we do with that? We come back over here again, and we plug it in. So 1/3 of 12 is 4. And then going back to our variables, it'll tell us what everything is. X here is our width, so our width is 4. And our length here is y, our length is 12. We really should assign some units here. So if you look at our perimeter is in meters. So this would be 4 meters and 12 meters. All right. Next is to review. So it says the width of a rectangular garden is 1/3 its length. Is our width 1/3 of 12? Yes. Perimeter is 32. So let's check that. Remember, for a perimeter, it would be 2 widths and 2 lengths. So 2 widths and 2 lengths. 8 plus 24 is 32. So it checks perfectly. There we go. So you can see they're both the same type of problem. With systems, we have 2 different variables. They form 2 different equations. So there will be 2 different relationships between each of these 2 variables written in the word problem. After you set them up, you solve, review your answers just to make sure you're correct. I mean, look how much work we just did on this whole problem. You don't want to make one tiny little error in here and then have this wrong and then have to go back and do it all over again. So it's best to just check them, make sure they're correct, and then move on to the next one. All right. So on the next page, there are 2 problems for you to try. So I want you to hit pause now, set these up, solve them, and get your answers. And then when you feel ready, undo the pause and check your work. All right, so hit pause now. Okay, and here are the answers. So obviously x and y, and so your equations should have been x plus y equals 8100, and x equals 8 times y. That's what it says. The horse was 8 times then the y, the cost of the saddle. Solving the equations, you should have got $7,200 for the horse and $900 for the saddle. For the next equation, you should have had x and y, of course, and then x plus y is 6,000, and x equals 1/3 y for the equation. So it says here that they had a total commission of 6,000. Total means you add them up. And then the agent's commission on one home, which is x, was, which is equals 1/3, so 1/3, and then of the commission on the second home. Commission on the second home was y. So x equals 1/3 y. If you put a plus or a minus in here, remember, for plus or minus or divide, they actually have to say plus, minus, or divide, or put a word in there. Multiplication does not require that, so we use the word of after the number, 1/3 of y. Of does not always mean multiply, but in this case it does. So the way you can always remember for multiply is there's nothing being given here as a word to represent that operation. It's just 1/3 of this number, so it's multiply. And then solving, you would get 4,500 for y and 1,500 for x, giving us a commission on one home of 1,500, and the second was 4,500. And it does have to be second home because that's how it's put into the problem. And then we check it. We get 6,000 for a total commission, and one is 1/3 the other. So there you have it. That's systems with translations. Thank you.